Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers have not necessarily had the most exciting or enriching offseason, but they've got some company across town. We'll break it down with the great Law Murray from The Athletic next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcast. This one's always free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. So we can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers, all of whom are a little curious about what's going to go on with what used to be intra-building rivalry. Now it actually is an intra-city rivalry between the Lakers and Clippers. We're going to talk about that today with the great Law Murray. He covers the Clippers for The Athletic. He's got a great video series that he's been posting. He's going to tell us about here in a second. Started covering the Clippers. How long has it been? It's been a few seasons, and the NBA media landscape here has been much better for it.
Yeah, the Athletic since January 2021, but I first started covering the Clippers for Clipper Blog. Shout out to Kevin Arnovitz. Back in the spring of 2014 after the Winter Olympic Games that year. So
Kevin's our guy too, man.
Yeah, Noted food podcaster Kevin Arnovitz.
Kevin is a man of many talents,
for sure.
Not just saying that.
It's crazy, Law. Like, before we get into just like the state of both of these teams, and they're both, I think, in interesting and kind of similar places. It's kind of crazy to think about the idea that, it was 5 years ago when the Lakers officially brought in Anthony Davis to team up with LeBron. They played the waiting game along with the Clippers for Kawhi, and that ended up going Kawhi and Paul George. And Paul George at one point had been so linked to the Lakers. I think the Lakers thought he was a surer shot than LeBron. But it's crazy that 5 years have passed. If you had asked people in 2019 which of these duos would still be intact, LeBron and Anthony Davis, or Kawhi and Paul George, all of the money would have been on Kawhi and Paul George.
That's surprising for me, just because I'm not surprised about how things went. At least this offseason. Like, I feel like the best thing about LeBron and Anthony Davis is just the fact that they won that first year. So like everything that they've done has been kind of chasing that first year. And the reason that first year for the Lakers was so successful is because LeBron's first year was so relatively disastrous. I feel like the best thing that the Lakers had for the 2019-20 season is not just that they got Anthony Davis, but they had a lease on how they were going to perform every year. I remember they started that year and they were like, our goal is to not lose consecutive games, back-to-back games. And for a long time, they achieved that goal. There was so much drama and dumb stuff that went down during the 18-19 season for the Lakers that they made a conscious effort to make sure that was not going to be what derails their season for the 19-20 year. And think about it. When they went to the bubble, it was that same attitude. Like I feel like they brought that over. And obviously the Clippers didn't really have those same things that bound them together for that first season. And one of the reasons they're not together now, besides the new CBA, that's, a factor for real. But one of the things is they didn't have a leg to stand on from a success standpoint. If LeBron and AD didn't win in 2020, could you honestly say that, like, at least Anthony Davis would still be there? How many contracts has Anthony Davis signed with the Lakers now?
Two, I think.
Yeah.
I believe it's two. Like, the line between extension versus new contract, I don't remember them all, but I believe he has put ink to paper with the Lakers twice.
Yeah. And
then also forced the trade. So, like, it's kind of three transactions.
Right. Like, all of those things are significant. And so they're still chasing what they accomplished their first year together. Whereas I honestly feel like one of the things that greased the skids for Paul to leave is simply for the fact that, they didn't have that success. Even when they made the conference finals in 2021, Kawhi wasn't there because of an ACL tear that honestly, that the franchise has never really recovered from.
I think Lakers fans, for example, have been really disappointed by the complete and total lack of movement for this team. They say they're the only team in the league that didn't add someone by trade or free agency, even the 14th guy on the bench or anything like that. It's Bronny and it's Dalton Knecht and it's last year's team. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. The Clippers, on the other hand, have had a lot more movement. But I get the impression, at least, and we're not as dialed into Clippers Twitter as we are Lakers, but I get the impression there's an equal amount of angst over what's been going on, and the trepidation of starting into the season with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden in the same way you're worried about LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Just those two guys can fall apart. Like there's just no guarantee you're getting through the year.
Yeah, and so what you hear a lot from people who follow the Clippers is, what are they going to do to get like a third guy who can score? Because people don't really look at anybody else on that team as being that player. Like Norman Powell has come off the bench the last couple of years. Like Norman can score, and Norman, when he's on the floor, it's not like he's there to, set up plays for anybody else. Like he's there to put the ball in the basket, and he's done an outstanding job of that. But it just feels like people also are like getting away from the team that they were under Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It was a 2-star team, and the ideal thing was to fill out the roster around those guys. I think last year, being that they had James Harden on the roster, they had Russell Westbrook on the roster. The year before, they finished the year with Russell Westbrook on the roster after a trade deadline, where it was clear to a lot of people that the front office, if they had it their way, like that was the team that they were going to have, a team that didn't necessarily include Russ. Like people are kind of blunted by the fact that they're used to seeing multiple guys, multiple quote unquote stars around Kawhi and Paul. But like, I look at it like Kawhi is going to be Kawhi, and James basically replaces the guy that they've been trying to get Paul to be over Tyronn Lue's entire tenure as the head coach. And they're going to not be as talented offensively, but because of that, I think their defense will improve just by the fact that they can't go in the game saying we're going to win off of talent.
Okay, but I want to get to probably in the next segment just sort of the state of the Lakers versus the Clippers, where you think both teams stand right now in LA in the Pacific. But do you think that if they had known that Paul George was ultimately going to leave, because they signed Kawhi to the extension first, then there was this prolonged negotiation with Paul George that ultimately resulted in PG leaving for nothing. Do you think if they had known that Paul George wasn't going to stay, they would still have given Kawhi the exact same extension?
I think so. Intuit Dome. That's all I got to say about that one. You got to make sure that you got somebody opening that building, and Kawhi wanted to do it. The team wanted to do it. That one was easy. Everything with Paul was going to be a little more complicated.
See, this also, too, by the way, Law, reinforces a theory that I bring up all the time when it comes to owners in sports, and even Steve Ballmer, who's the richest owner in sports, one of the richest people in the world, period. They all care about the money, and they all care about the investment. Like the idea of, like you said, opening up into it would potentially influence the decisions you make that might not be the most practical in terms of team building and optionality, but damn it, we are not opening up this brand new building with nobody that fans recognize, or nobody that
it's not going to be the house that Norm Powell built. Let's talk a little bit about that question of where the teams are. I think both now and down the road. I'm really curious as to which roster, if you could pick one situation, which team you think is better situated right now. We'll get to that and talk a little bit about how the Intuit Dome and the opening of that new building changes that dynamic between these two teams. So we'll get to all of that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe when it comes to workouts, you never skip leg day, but do your gym sessions come at the expense of therapy? When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, work, your significant other, all sorts of different stuff, it can be easy to let the priorities for yourself slip away. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, ironically, non-negotiables like therapy become more important than ever. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what other people have, so you can start living your best life. And I can attest to how talking with a professional therapist helped me and my family during a really difficult period for us, just helping us better communicate with each other and figure out compromises that don't feel like you're leaving yourself completely unfulfilled or unheard. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, it is a different experience for everyone, a unique experience for everyone, and you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
All right. So, Law, you have, column A, you have column B, you got the Lakers on one side, you've got the Clippers on the other. Both have some institutional sort of baked in problems, you could say, with NBA finances, and some tricky things to navigate. Both teams have stars that are really good in their peak, but with some question marks. If you could pick a team to control, you could pick one roster, one cap sheet, all that stuff between these teams in LA, which team would you pick?
Right now, I would just say the Lakers, just because I do feel like there is going to be a certain advantage to the fact that all those dudes are coming back. I know that that's been a big thing with their the angst of their offseason. They are what they've pretty much been for the past few years. One of the reasons that Lakers roster is the way it is because they treated their team like a conference finalist, right? Summer of the 2023 gave a bunch of dudes options in their contracts to help lock them in. And when they were actually repeating a 7 seed, all those dudes who could have opted in. That's one of the reasons they are in the position they are now. But I do think they're not like average. They're a little bit above average, right? It's not a 7 seed is nothing to sneeze at when you got to win as many games as you had to win. I mean, yes, they entered the play-in tournament as an 8th seed, but obviously, that team was able to be better than the Pelicans were, and so I feel like there is going to be some things that give them an advantage. Whereas the Clippers, we're going to be looking at how healthy is Kawhi to start a year? How sustainable can he be? And there's many more adjustments that they have to make on both ends of the floor. And, how long is it going to take for them to make them? So I know the Lakers are changing head coaches. The Clippers have an outstanding head coach that the Lakers probably would have liked to have had. Let's just say T. Lue remembers all of that, and the results have borne out. But yeah, and again, we're talking paper, but the Lakers they have an advantage of the fact that they have the same dudes playing, and the Clippers, they got more adjustments to make. I think it might be a little bit harder for them to start out, and everyone's going to be worried about just how sustainable Kawhi can be.
This is actually, LeBron and AD were very available last year, but this is the dance that goes on with LeBron right now, trying to find that balance between making yourself as available as you can while still pacing yourself for health reasons so you can be the best version of yourself in the playoffs. And in particular, that second end of it's been really hard for Kawhi.
Yeah, I feel so bad for Kawhi, man, because as you mentioned, his durability was always going to be a thing. Every time that dude falls, every time he gets hit hard, every time he has to play a high minute game, you're wondering, okay, how's Kawhi? But dude didn't miss a game until December. Right. They played a stretch of 5 games in 7 days at the end of November. He played all those games, and it's like, okay. Kawhi is healthy, and not just healthy. He was playing great. He dunked more than ever. He played more minutes per game than ever. Like, there's no qualifications or since 2019 or whatever. No, ever. Like, he played at a high level, and he was a major factor of the team digging itself out of that 6-game losing streak rut that they were in just to stay out of the play-in tournament again, you know, and then his knee flares up for the third year. Really, it's the fourth year in a row that knee has compromised the postseason for Kawhi Leonard. It's just been the most unfortunate thing. It obviously played a role in how the summer went with the Olympics, right? Everyone's going to be wondering about that. I feel like Kawhi is healthy right now. I feel like he's been in the gym. He's been working. He doesn't play 5-on-5. That was another thing where it's like him wanting to be on that Olympic team. He does not hoop. He doesn't go to the Drew League. He doesn't, go into, like these private runs that you see during the summertime. No, like Kawhi does his thing. Like, he works on his body. He works on his skill set, and he comes ready to play in training camp. And he would have put that aside to play in the Olympics, something that he never got a chance to do before, and more than likely will never get a chance to do, period. And so that's the thing. It's like the reason James Harden is on the team is because Kawhi and Paul couldn't stay on the floor, and they needed to maximize the window that they had last year. And damn it, I would have wanted to see what that looked like. You know, everything is different if Kawhi's knee holds up and the team that you saw most of the winter of this past season enters the playoffs in April.
Andy asked the question of, like, would the Clippers have made that deal? Would they have, would they have re-upped with Kawhi? And it's that lottery ticket. It's like the same thing with the LeBron and AD. If you're not going to have LeBron and AD, well, what are you going to go get that's better? And Kawhi, it's like, okay, there's a good chance over 4 or 5 seasons that he's just not going to be available for a couple of them, like when you need him. But he'd probably be available for one. And if things line up in that one season, he and another guy are good enough to win you a lot of games. I mean, that's the attraction, I would assume, for both rosters.
And the Lakers,
for their stars.
And the Lakers are hoping it can happen one more time with LeBron and AD, because fact of the matter is the Russell Westbrook deal and everything they've had to do to unwind it, but also the time that they lost in that season and a half, there's a real chance it shut the window for LeBron and AD. Even though they've been on balance healthier than Kawhi has been, it's never easy. It's never easy to win a championship. And, you can't afford to miss opportunities for whatever reason, injuries with the Clippers, or in the case of the Lakers, waste them by making a silly decision.
Yeah, I mean, and you can blame Rob Pelinka for that. Like,
we do.
Just be real
all the time,
at least
like
2 or 3 times a week.
Like, here's my thing with the Lakers. Objectively speaking, you win the championship. They went all 2011 Mavericks and completely changed the makeup of 2 of their starting positions just going into the next year. And they started pretty well that year, but obviously the injuries exposed some things. They panic even further. Next thing you know, Andre Drummond is on your roster, completely cannibalize your center position. Dennis Schroeder basically acts like Dennis Schroeder. And now his mind is elsewhere. That's your point guard position. And you get into the playoffs, and, after Andre Drummond does the LeBron post shimmy on the damn bench, series was never the same again. Next thing you know, Anthony Davis is being called out for his perceived lack of toughness or whatever. And then you go get Russ, Right. And it's like, you just fail to identify what makes sense for your own team and your own roster. You basically waste a season off of that. They were fortunate to get to the conference on 2023. They were 13th in the West at one point that winter?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and we give the West too much credit some of these years. Like, shout out to the Lakers for getting to the Western Conference Finals. I'm not taking any of that away from them. The West was silly that year. Denver got the 1 seed in the middle of January, looked at the rest of the West and said, we're good. Cruise control the rest of the way. And that confused a lot of people. Why? Because Denver doesn't have the reputation of doing anything significant in the playoffs, whereas some of these other teams, the Golden State Warriors, another team that we try and make great again all the time because of stuff that happened 5 rosters ago. It's like, yeah, we expect them to light up the playoffs or whatever. They've only done that once in the last 5 years.
And it's as if there was a strong sense that season that Adam Silver was by decree reining in the rest of the conference so the Lakers could get their stuff together enough to make the playoffs. But I mean, it's a really challenging situation for the Lakers to figure out how to undo those things. I think describing what they did with Russ as like an overreaction and a panic to you that even after, despite all those things, if AD, I think, maintained since then, if AD doesn't get hurt against the Suns in that first round, I think they beat Phoenix and they advance and, probably could have gone at the very least back to the Western Conference Finals that season. And then they freaked out. It is difficult to figure out how to toe that line. So what do these teams do going forward? How do they kind of look at not just now, but the future? Because it's a challenging spot for both of them. And then too, how does the Intuit Dome change the dynamic? Because I really do think it does. One more segment with Law Murray coming up next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. Some of my favorite memories growing up in St. Louis as a kid involved going to Cardinals games in the summer, either with family or with my friends, watching Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, Jose Oquendo, or as an adult in LA in the summer with my buddies at Dodger Stadium. And if I want tickets to a game, I go to Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. The Game Time app is easy to browse through to see upcoming games. They got flash deals where you save even more on selected seats ahead of the game. Also zone deals where just you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day. For your second listen, try the Locked On NBA podcast. Nobody keeps you more informed or entertained. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get to the stuff that I just mentioned, we did want to ask you, the Lakers hired, is his last name pronounced Levesque?
Bo Levesque, like Triple H.
Yeah. He was their player, the Clippers player development coordinator. Now he's an assistant on JJ Redick's staff. Obviously, I don't know a whole lot about him, including how to pronounce his last name. Who is this guy the Lakers hired?
Yeah, I'm a miss seeing Bo all the time, so I'll be looking forward to seeing my guy. Bo is someone that when I first started to understand who was on Tyronn Lue's coaching staff, and really, you remember my first year covering the Clippers for the Athletic, we were on Zoom, so I'm not seeing the player, the assistants outside of them being on the bench. It's not, we never got to interact with them. It's not like they were made available for interviews. We're not in the practice facility or anything. We're not on the road. So the first time I really got to notice Bo was training camp in San Diego. And like, you see the younger assistants, they'll be on the court working the stay ready game, stuff like that. This dude was dunking, and I'm like, why you got more bounce than half the roster? And if you've been around like some of these like assistants, like the backbench assistants, the player development guys, the guys who before a practice starts, they're working with guys after practice, like they're working with guys. And when I say working, I mean like they're defending them hard in their face, stuff like that, to work them out. And it's like I asked Bo, it's like, bro, like how you so athletic and you coaching? And I just feel like It was Bo's time to step up. The Clippers had a deep coaching staff. They've had guys who, like last year, they had Cam Hodges, and Cam would be the guy playing Russell Westbrook one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? And so Cam, Ime Udoka, he got the job in Houston, and he hired Cam. And Cam broke it down to me the same way I think Bo would break it down. When you are one of those backbench assistants, one of those player development guys, like, there's a pecking order, and there's also just a level of security that you have or don't have. And getting to be an assistant is another level of security. You get a chance to not just be like, I'm not even talking about where you're sitting at on the bench. It's like there's more salary. When you start having your family and you start, that athleticism might start to fade. It's like you want to make sure that you're able to, lock in those kind of coaching jobs. It's a promotion for Bo. He's worked with Luke Kennard. He's worked with young guys. He's the guy, not just working them out on the court, but sitting next to them, showing them tape and stuff like that. Bo is incredibly smart, a guy who understands the game because he's played it, because he's coached it, and he's a Sean Fine disciple. When Kenny Atkinson got the job to go to Golden State for Steve Kerr's staff, when Golden State figured they needed to remix their coaching staff, Sean Fine got to be promoted as the head of the player development role. That's what Kenny Atkinson was. And, Sean Fine has been with Bo Levesque for years. So it's a good coaching tree, if you will. If you like what Kenny Atkinson does as far as developing players, if you like what Sean Fine has done, especially the way Sean Fine works with the shooters, and the Clipper shooters have been great every single year that Sean Fine's been on that staff. Well, Bo Levesque is going to find his niche with the Lakers staff, and it's a great hire by JJ Redick. With JJ Redick, like whatever the jokes are, whatever narratives are, you guys brought me on, and I love talking to you guys. And I'm not the type to participate in any of that foolishness. I mean, I love jokes, and I'm going to be petty and make some at some point. But the thing with JJ is, like, that dude knows what he needs to see in a team. Like, that dude didn't miss the playoffs in his entire NBA career until he got to New Orleans. Like, being a coach, as we especially know, it ain't just about the X's and O's and what you're going to do, drawing stuff up. It's your relationships. It's your ability to reach a diverse group of guys. It's the ability to identify coaches that you feel like you need to support you, because you might be the head coach. You might be the first in line and the last guy making the decision, but in the middle, you need people to hold you accountable. You need to understand where your blind spots are. You need to be able to identify the people who are going to challenge you and push you. And you're going to spend more time with those people than you're going to spend with anybody else. More than the front office, more than the players, certainly more than the fans or Twitter. So, like, that's their biggest, honestly, that's the Lakers' biggest chance, biggest opportunity to do things differently than the roster that you saw last April.
Yeah, I think fans are certainly hoping that. Just the dissatisfaction with Darvin Ham was palpable, both obviously among fans, but you get the impression inside the building as well. I mean, they did fire the guy. Before we go, the building, the Intuit Dome is open. You wrote, after the schedule about how this is the impacts that this has from a practical standpoint on the Clippers, what it means for their game schedules, why Steve Ballmer wanted to build a building, and all these other things, both in the short and the long term. What do you think the Clippers having their own arena, not just any arena, but a state-of-the-art arena, does for this sort of LA basketball rivalry?
Shoot, short term, you saw it right away. That schedule is, I mean, look, every NBA team has their pluses and minuses with the schedule. You got to play 82 games, as my friend Dave DeFore likes to point out. Every team's going to play 82 this year. But like, that schedule is logistically a schedule that they can't really trip about. They could trip about the 5 and 7s, the crazy long road trips, especially compared to the Lakers, who are playing in the same building, the matinee games, the abundance of afternoon home matinee games. There are 0 of them this year.
Mm-hmm.
There are 0 I hate matinee games, because unlike these writers who they do their thing and they actually have a life afterwards, when it's a game day for me, it's like I wind up doing stuff the rest of the day, and I get out of there. It's like the sun's down. Okay.
Right.
Give me a night game because at least I can be out at 1:00 in the morning and be comfortable, So I'm not going to have anything to complain about. You ain't never going to hear no complaints from me about getting up early in the morning, going to the arena for a game at home. So there's that. And just the fact that like you want your people to be invested in the team early in the season. I looked at every Lakers home game. I looked at every Clippers home game. If the Lakers are home, the Clippers are not playing at home. If the Clippers are at home, the Lakers are not playing until and that's the arrangement for all of November, for all of October. Like not even New York has that to start next season. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, Intuit Dome, when it's an Intuit Dome home game until December, like they're the only game in town. Same thing with the Lakers and the downtown LA arena. In the long term, guys, this is an arena where LA is already a destination spot. People want to come to LA and play basketball. The Clippers have done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
Like they're going to use the arena as a selling point. It's just that simple. Like, and you know what? Being at the arena last week with a bunch of players there, it wasn't even a basketball game. It was a show, but people were like, yeah, this is cool. It's cool to be here. It's right by LAX. That's how you have to kind of look at Inglewood. It's right by LAX. Like the location is going to be cool, but inside, that's your home arena. That's the office. That's the practice facility. It's not complicated. That's where you're going to be. You know what I mean? Even in New York, it's like the best thing about the Nets, that what the Nets have is it's like, look, you want to be in a place and not have to worry about a whole lot of stuff else. Brooklyn has everything you need. Whereas with the Knicks play in Manhattan, but they practice like an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You consolidate your life. You make it easy for guys, like creature comforts.
Exactly. And like we know this because, again, you guys, not to date you guys, but what did they always say about the Clippers and their practice situation in the 90s and the early 2000s?
We are old enough and have been doing this long enough to remember when they practice at the health club.
And obviously the Clippers have come a long way in terms of amenities well before Intuit, but like just that sense of identity for the Clippers. And it's not about turning LA into a Clipper town. Like, I don't think that's Steve Ballmer's goal. I don't think Steve Ballmer thinks that's possible. If it were, it would take 30 to 40 years, 50 years minimum, just because the institutional heft and head start the Lakers have. It's about just creating your own legit identity. And I do think the Clippers have done a really, really good job of that over like the last 10 years.
And what do those 10 years correlate with?
Bye-bye Donald Sterling.
Exactly. So this is the thing that I always tell people about with Intuit Dome, because I love being a basketball historian. Like when the team was in Buffalo, they played in an arena that was not built for the Braves. When they moved to San Diego, they did not play in an arena that was built with the Clippers in mind. Even when they moved to LA, they played in the LA Sports Memorial,
Arena,
right?
Arguably the dumpiest building.
Exactly. I mean, the Lakers played there when they first moved to Los Angeles before the Forum, right? When they went to Anaheim, to play a few games there in the 90s, right? Obviously, the Ducks played there. Anaheim would have loved the Clippers move there. That didn't happen. Staples Center opens up in 99, and the Clippers are the third tenant in that building, which hamstrings their schedule for literally a quarter century. So this is the first building in the 50 plus years of that franchise that was built specifically for them. And they're the only tenant that's going to play there as far as a major sports team for the foreseeable future.
Before we go, tell us a little bit about it. Everybody, I think, knows the work that you do at The Athletic on the Clipper beat and the NBA beat.
Not everyone does.
Well, a lot.
We're working on it still, man.
But tell us a little about the videos you're putting together.
Yeah, so I'm doing what I'm calling the Epitome Game Series. I started it last year. A couple years ago, I was like, "What if can you define every team by in the offseason based off of how they played last year. Their biggest strength, their biggest weakness was their game that was like, oh man, great shooting team. Like this was their best shooting game, or terrible rebounding team. This is the game where they gave up 20 offensive rebounds or whatever. And then I started watching the games last year. Actually, 2 years ago, I started watching them. But last year, I started like actually doing a video series. And that's how I wanted to start my TikTok. So this year, I'm doing it again. I'm like left myself less time in August to do it, but I'm doing it. We're up and running. We're underway. And I'd appreciate y'all like checking that out, either on YouTube or my TikTok. I'm sure it'll get on IG at some point. But like, I don't have a blue check, so I can't put them on Twitter. I can put the links on Twitter, but yeah, they don't let me get a blue check on there. So, and I'm sure as hell not paying for one. So
right, well, you can find the links on Twitter at Law Murray VNU. Where would people find it on TikTok?
Same thing, same handle.
Okay, cool.
That's one of the ones that we don't do. I don't really know how to TikTok. Nobody wants to see me do that. All right. Law Murray, one of the great voices that you can find in the NBA talking about basketball. His analysis and his coverage is a must for anyone who loves talking about the game. Thanks so much for coming on. It's great to see you.
Hey, thank you guys. Shout out to my guy Dime. I'm sure he does a great job. I know he does a great job, but I got to shout out all three of you guys. So thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers first listen today. Go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will see everyone tomorrow.